There's a famous quote that's been attributed to a lot of really smart people. It goes, "Most people don't see things as they are. They see things as they are." What it means is that the way we see the world says a lot more about us than it does about the world we see. Well, a few years ago, I was having breakfast at Bob Evans with a friend of mine, and he told me a story about a time he was making a presentation to a bunch of business tycoons. This was in the 70s, and he was a bank executive at the time. He was running late for this particular meeting, and he didn't have time to make copies of his presentation before leaving his office. And so he figured, when I get there, I'll just have the secretary. They still called them secretaries at the time. I'll just have the secretary make copies for me. So he arrives at the place the meeting was being held, and he scans the large room filled with executives, and he's looking for the secretary. Well, he spots a lady in the corner having a conversation with another man, and so he rushes over to her, interrupts the conversation, and extends his hand filled with papers towards her. And he says, "Hey, I'm the guy making a presentation in a few minutes. Would you please make a copy of this for everyone that's going to be in the room?" Well, the lady doesn't extend her hand to take the papers. She just stares at him. The other guy's just staring at him too. Then the lady finally said, "I'm not the secretary. I'm the vice president of this company." Well, now this guy's embarrassed. What am I going to do? I've just totally humiliated myself. So what he does is stoop down, untie the shoes he's wearing, and then stand up and put the shoe in his mouth for 3 seconds. Then he said to the lady, "This is a living illustration of what I just did. Would you please forgive me?" Well, eventually the lady started laughing, and she took him to the copy room where he could make copies of the presentation. He also said that they became really good friends after that. More importantly, he said that he learned a lesson that day. The lesson he learned was that he had a limited view of women, and he could only conceive of women in a business setting at best as being secretaries, the people responsible for setting the table or making copies or doing things of that sort. He said, "I realized that the world was changing, and with my limiting view, I was going to be left behind and I was going to hurt a lot of feelings." So he said from that day forward, if I was going to make assumptions about people, I was going to make what Danny Meyer would later call the charitable assumption. The charitable assumption means, for example, if someone cuts you off in traffic, it's not because they're a jerk, but thinking charitably of them, you would assume maybe they're running late for a job interview, or maybe they're on their way to a hospital to be next to one of their loved ones. Well, we finished our breakfast, and when we went to pay, he says to the young cashier, "Hey, would you please tell all your employees they did such a wonderful job. Every time we come here, the hospitality is just superb." Well, the young lady behind the cash register, she looks at him and she says, "Hey, I'm just a regular employee. I'm not the manager, but I'll pass the word along to our manager." Then he looks at her and he says, "Oh, I could have sworn you looked like a manager to me." And then he turned around, winked at me, and we left. I looked at the lady's face as we were near the door, and she had a huge smile plastered all over her face.